We're good to get cracking. Scott, mate, thanks very much for coming on and doing this. Just getting into the questions. Good with you.
Aye.
Introductions. Who are you? What line of business are you in? And what area geographically does your business operate?
I'm Scott Wilson. I'm the owner and main electrician, only electrician so far for Scott Wilson Electrical Services. Obviously, I'm an electrician working in domestic, commercial, anything that's required really. The main area I'm in is kind of Western Bartonshire, but that's kind of spreading further afield. You know, Glasgow and Western Bartonshire area. Staying in Western Bartonshire, you're advertising, people see where you come from. So they like to go local. So a majority of my work comes to being working local. But obviously that's becoming more further afield. The more you advertise, you know, the kind of more people that are sharing stuff for you on Facebook and stuff like that, it gets you a bit further afield.
How long have you been going for, Scott? How long have you been running the place for?
I've had the limited company has been for 3.5 years, but I've only been out myself since August. Kind of after lockdown, just decided to give it a go. I had 18 weeks working for somebody. I wasn't working, I was in furlough for 18 weeks and then went back up to Aberdeen, which is where I was working beforehand. And basically, they went into lockdown again. So I decided I've had enough of this. So started advertising, obviously only doing essential works and stuff like that, going with all the COVID rules. And it's just kind of taken off for there. And obviously, as the restrictions ease, the work seem to be getting busier because more people are obviously wanting to get stuff done now. Since we're not going on holiday anytime soon and I've got loads of money.
Well, we were talking earlier on in the phone, Scott, and things have been going from strength to strength to you for a wee while since you've started. Lots of word of mouth and then gaining work out work that you're doing. You know, it's snowballing once you get a wee job, somebody across the road's wanting you, and it's been going well for the last wee while, which is great to hear, mate. We'll get into all that, so we will later on. I'll have some questions and we'll get into that. But if I could just take you back to your first job, and we'll go all the way back. I know it's a long time ago now, long before that big beard.
First job as in out of school, first job when I became an electrician?
I right to the very start, mate. Your very first job when you became...
Well, I started my apprenticeship when I was 16, 10 days after my 16th birthday. 8 days after my 16th birthday, that's when I started my apprenticeship. Right. And that was with City Building. So I was with them, I done my apprenticeship and I worked with them for 10 years. And then family kind of circumstances changed. I had my wee boy, which meant I had 2 kids at that time. So I started wanting to make more money. I wasn't making enough money and then started chasing the money, basically, for a while.
10 years, Scott, did you say?
10 years I was with City Building, aye.
Right, so see your first couple of years in there, your first couple of days, how did you actually get that job? How did that come about?
Well, they came to this, they used to do, they don't think they do it anymore, but they used to come to the school. So they actually came to my high school. The guys for City Building came to the high school and I had like a wee open day. And they had a load of people, that was all the kids that were interested in it when you were in 4th year, were speaking to them and they were telling you about all the different jobs and all that kind of stuff. And when I was in school, I was quite interested in physics. I always liked to kind of working with my hands and stuff like that. So it was quite early on that I had an interest in it. So that, I mean, the whole process, I done like a week's work experience. You got by that. You done another 2 weeks work experience. You got by that, and then you done an interview, which you then eventually got the job. But the first week's work experience was in the January. Everybody was going to college, right, to Annie's Line College and all that, to do building courses, and I was actually doing work experience for a job. But I eventually got the job and started in August. So it was quite early on. I was only like, obviously just 15 at the time when I started doing the work experience. So I had a daunting experience to start with.
Right. Did you enjoy it, mate? Straight in there, did you enjoy it?
Aye, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant because the first work experience you done was at the college. You did a week's work experience up in the college where they had the lecturers and stuff like that, where had you in the workshop and you were doing stuff, trying to assess how capable you were to do the job. And then the 2 weeks work experience was on site. I was working in the drum chapel, up in drum chapel, getting around the houses with a couple of tradesmen. It was a bit of eye-opener anyway.
And then right into the lines then there for your first...
Aye, definitely, aye.
God, brilliant. What about when you initially started with the company?
Aye, it was good. It was. I was quite lucky because we city building. A lot of people worked in houses all the time, but I was working in the city centre branch, so it was like sports centres, the city chambers, libraries, offices, and all that. I was working in, so it was a lot more commercial work that I was doing. But obviously didn't know it at the time. But looking back on it, it was a lot better for my experience. You got a different variety of work,
Right.
whether it was maintenance or installs.
Right, right. If I know it's quite technical, Scott, and I probably won't understand most of it, but what type of stuff did you learn? Obviously, being an electrician, what were you doing? What was the specific job?
Well, the difference, the main difference being is if you can imagine, obviously, you're working in a house, you know, you're kind of limited. It's light switches, sockets, lights. You know, the way they work essentially is the same, whether it's in an office or a house, but it's just on a bigger scale when you're using different types of cable and all that. And I was learning a lot of things on site that when you went to college, they were teaching you about the different types of cable you use. And a lot of the boys I was at college with had never even heard of these things, and I had already used them on site just because of where I was working.
What about your kind of foreman and your tradesman in your first early years? Was hard learning curve for any of them?
I was quite cheeky and all that, you know, and I think it's kind of funny because I still keep in contact with people that I worked with. I'm still good pals with a few of the guys that I was tradesmen with. That was my tradesman. And I've not worked there for nearly 13 years now, but I still go to night suit with them. Obviously, no this year, but normally we still go to night suit and all that kind of stuff together. But the one thing they says about me was they just used to say how cheeky I was. You know, like you're kind of. I think when you get older, you're being cheeky, but you're kind of funny with it. Whereas when you're younger, you're being cheeky, just being cheeky. You know, so. But obviously they stuck with me and it turned out all right. But it was a brilliant place to work. It was. I think I was quite lucky with the apprenticeship with City Building because they've got their own training centre and all that kind of thing, and they're quite well known for being good for the training. So it was never going to be somewhere I would have stayed long term. Obviously I stayed for 10 years, but I mean, and still being there just now and all that, I just got to the stage where I just wanted to do something different. You know, I've always kind of didn't really like stick to doing the same thing. You obviously get different types of jobs as an electrician that you can do, so I wanted to do something else and obviously earn more money.
Aye. Would you have left earlier, looking back? No, or would you have stuck at the 10 year?
Well, I actually left when my son was born. So Scott was born, which I suppose kind of prompted me to do it a bit quicker. You know, having the second child, you know, you're worrying about finances and stuff like that. So I actually went on paternity leave for the week and just never went back. So I went on paternity leave and then I spoke to my manager and he says, you know, I just spoke to him and I'd actually left for an agency job, which I was told at the time was absolutely mental to do because obviously, as we both know through our experiences, you know, it's not a very secure environment to work in, but I just got to the stage where I thought that that's what I wanted to do and I just done it.
Was it just the added responsibility of having a kid that made you think I need to step up my game here a wee bit?
I was at the point where I felt like I was earning, we were getting a wee bit overtime and stuff like that, but I just didn't feel like I was getting enough. And I knew people that worked in different companies and stuff like that, and I knew the kind of money that you could make, you know. So that just made the decision for me. It was money, and it was also what I was doing. It was emergency light testing, which, you know, is essentially just walking around with a fish key and turning off, you know, testing emergency lights, turning them on for 3 hours at a time. I was doing that for a couple of years before I left the council, and I just thought, you know, if I stick doing this for another 5 or 6 years, I'll know how to put a socket on. Do you know what I mean?
Aye. So going into agency work, earning a bit more money there, and it's a bit more, it's reliable work and stuff like that. But your first experience with that, do you remember that?
Aye, it was good. I worked with a company that was doing refurbishments and Clydesdale banks. So I went straight from doing like emergency light testing and maintenance to doing like at night shift, constant night shift, doing installs and banks, you know, full refurbishments of banks. And it was a good experience. Obviously, no, you can say that looking back at now. Sometimes I wished I'd never left. You know what I mean? When you're stunning, having to wire in lights at 4 o'clock in the morning, you can't even keep your eyes open. Do you know what I mean? But Aye, it was good. I worked with them for, I think it was about 6 months. I was with them, but I then found out obviously how the realities of it. They were talking about future jobs and how these guys are going to come and help you on this job and stuff like that. When in reality, a week later, I get paid off. The guys were actually coming to replace me. It's just that you didn't know that at the time. Do you know what I mean?
Right, okay.
So that was a kind of bit of a kick in the teeth. You kind of found that out the hard way, but obviously, over the years, because I'd been in the same job for years, so obviously you've been with these people for 6 months. You just think that's you. You're one of the guys, didn't you? You kind of forget that you're an agency boy.
That's a
especially when you're younger, a bit more naive.
Totally, especially when you're younger, a bit more naive. But that's the way it works with the agencies, isn't it? Is when you're working that way, you're freelance, then you're totally disposable, and can tell you what you want and drop you when you want. But now and again,
that's it.
It can become good, you know, like it can be a chance to network and build on something. I'm sure you'd had a couple of companies that wanted to keep a hold of you over the years.
The main problem I encountered with that was probably more recently in the last maybe 5 or 6 years, there was companies I worked with, and what I found was if you were working with an agency and the company wanted to take you on, the problem you had was the agency was due a finder's fee.
No, that's right.
So the agency was due, let's just say, £3,000 or £4,000 for what they're claiming to be is finding you, unearthing you, when in reality they've done nothing. All you've done is phone them up and ask them for a job, you know. But that was just the way it works with their contracts. So a couple of times when that probably would have happened, that maybe stopped people, because you know they really, you had to have a break and you working with them. You know, you had to go away from working with them and then maybe come back a month later or something and apply for a job with them, you know.
Right, okay.
You couldn't just go from one job to another without them having to pay money for you, basically. A signing on fee.
Maybe, you know, if you're worth learning for you, as if you're in that position, maybe you don't tell your agency. Maybe you talk direct to the employer and you just go, let's sort this out between ourselves once this project ends, maybe in hindsight, if that sort of thing, do that probably.
Aye, 90% of the time with agencies, the jobs are only short term, so you don't really get a kind of, pardon me, build up a kind of rapport with any of the companies, you know, so essentially you're just a number most of the time.
How did you go about getting involved in the agency carry on and all the different short-term projects and stuff like that? What did you do, mate, to get involved in that?
Well, obviously after that first one kind of collapsed, I then speaking to people I knew and knew people that I was kind of new for the 6 months I was doing agency work, who obviously had a bit more experience of doing that. They were saying, oh, phone this number, phone that number. I remember I used to sit there and you'd get Google and you'd put in like agencies in Glasgow and you just write all the phone numbers down and just sit and phone them all. You know, and don't get me wrong, some of them you phone up, they didn't even deal with electricians, but you done that and it got to the point where after a few years of doing that, I was registered with maybe about 30 or 40 agencies. So by that point, when you're a bit more experienced, you're not worried about getting paid a job after a week, because you know that you can phone somebody up and within an hour of you phoning them, maybe if you need to phone 3 or 4 people, that you can get a job for the following week. You know what I mean? So
totally. As many as you can possibly contact, and then they start contacting you, and it becomes overload. They're contacting you too much at times. And when work's going well, was trying to explain that to one of my pals who's just recently getting into construction. Got a CSCS card. He's after like 20 years of being a guitar teacher and other stuff like that, never been involved in it at all. He's got his first job in an agency and he's been dead reliable, and he's they like him. He's been in the door for about 3 months. He's outlasted every other labourer that's in the place. But I'm trying to tell him about, you know, getting in contact with all the other agencies. Make sure you've got your name in, registered with at least 10, 20 agencies so that you're options open, because there's other jobs next door to you that are paying £2, £3 more an hour with that sort of stuff. Your previous working position, so your working agency, mate, your working agency, for how many years did you do that?
I did agencies, and then, so it was like kind of in and out of it, really. You'd work with an agency and then something would come up, you'd speak to somebody, this company's taking people on, you'd maybe end up working with somebody books in for a while. And then, but my experience of that, I had a couple of companies that were all right. They couldn't have been that good because I never stayed with them. But, you know, I always found in my experience with companies was you would work with them for a certain period of time. I know it's happened to yourself. You work with them for a certain period of time, everything seems great, and then something will happen, and then it's just, there'll be a wee thing that maybe happens. But I think as I've get older and maybe more experience as well, probably more things have annoyed me with jobs than it would have been when I was younger, because I've got a particular way that I like to work, and also your conditions as well. Like say probably the last company I worked with when I was books in, my main condition with him was I wasn't working in Edinburgh, because I wasn't willing to travel through to Edinburgh and travel back from Edinburgh for the same money I could get working in Glasgow. And I told him that. And eventually I think that pretty much put an end to that one. So
right, so you were chasing that money, you were basically telling.
No, it wasn't not even so much chasing the money at that time, just somebody gets you and they're working for you, and I was always quite upfront about how, look, by the way, I'm happy to do this many hours, I'm happy to work night shift, but I don't want to be going through to Edinburgh, I don't want to be working away from home, or, for me it was never, you weren't working for a company that you're working in Glasgow or you're working away, you're either working away from home or you're no.
Nice.
So when I was working for a company that I'd done work in Glasgow where I was just working at home and that was it.
You got enough options, Scott, available through the agency, working through part-time projects and stuff like that to get involved in. You didn't need to work in Edinburgh.
Basically, with agencies it was never a problem, because 90% of the time with them you were only there for the duration of one job. So if they're phoning you up saying I've got a job in Edinburgh, the answer was always no. So it was never a problem. And obviously after a while they get to know you and they know where you're going to work and stuff like that. So obviously the fact that it's expired now, because I had my complex and stuff like that as well, and I've got my triple STS, my supervisor's course, that obviously made it easier for me to get jobs as well. Quite a lot of experience, plus you've got obviously those extra cards, which basically meant you could just kind of get a job, no bother.
See, looking back over all the years of agency work you've done, I know you've just recently started your own place not too long ago, it's gone well, but all the years of all the agency work and all the different projects you've been involved in, what's the best things you learnt for that you've took into business ownership?
Probably the I would say that one of the main things that I've taken for that is probably the way you deal with people, and the way. So I've recently just got an apprentice. So with him, I spoke to him at the start when he started, and I'm always up front with him, and I say to him, look, this is how we're going to work. But if there's something we're going to do and you're not happy with something, or I says to him when he started, in terms of his hours, his working hours, we agreed on his working hours at the start, but I said to him, it's no set in stone. If you've got something like, just say playing football with his pals or something, plays football on a Tuesday, if you need to finish early for that, then, or it's a problem you want to a certain time, let me know. I said, I don't want you to be unhappy, because obviously work is just part of it, isn't it? It's not everything. He's only an 18-year-old boy, so you obviously want him to have a life as well.
Try to build something in your company where treating people like you want to be treated, and a wee bit of kind of...
Aye, because I've obviously seen both sides here. I've seen people that treat you well, and people that will maybe tell you one thing and do another and stuff like that. So always to be upfront with people, and I think it's, I would say, when I do eventually take somebody else on, because the way things are going on, getting an electrician, that's one thing I will be when I'm speaking to them. Because I've had companies that took me on, not even agency, more probably a books in job, and they'll say to you, at the time when I was maybe chasing money and stuff like that, and you're saying to them, oh, do you get much overtime? We do overtime all the time and all that, and then you get in there and you get 2 Saturday shifts and then don't work a week, so don't work overtime for about another 2 years. So if I've got somebody in, I'll be saying to them, what is it you're looking for? And if they say to me loads of overtime, the likelihood is I'll just tell them it's not going to be any good for you, because I've got no intention working the weekends if I can. It's only when required. It's never going to be, although obviously that might change depending on what work I've got and what contracts I'm doing. But
we were talking about that earlier on, Scott, whereas if you're working with agency and you're working in different projects, short-term stints, it's their agenda which is up there wanting you to work extra hours, their agenda, but whereas you can put in the extra hours and that's fine to put in extra hours, but it's a lot better position to be in putting the extra hours in when and how you want to put them. You know what I mean? I think that's excellent that you've achieved that now. And that's the thing for you, as you're saying earlier on to me on the phone. You can work extra hours during the week, put it in when you need to, do the jobs you need to do, get things covered, but take a Friday off now and again to watch after your boys, which is brilliant.
Well, my obviously me, as I said to you earlier on, the way it works for me is ideal, because I'll do my hours Monday to Wednesday, and then I'm finished. I don't work past 2 o'clock on a Thursday or a Friday because that's my days. I get my boys. I pick my boys up for school. So I'm able to work it that way, and obviously through Easter holidays and stuff like that, I've had every Friday off as well. So, you know, don't get me wrong, it's brilliant being able to do that, but it can be hard when you're trying to fit all the jobs in as well, which obviously isn't a bad thing that you're busy, but can be a bit difficult, and you maybe end up having to do extra hours on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because of that. But it's just all part of the course, isn't it? So
at least you can determine, a bit more determine it yourself when it suits you, rather than somebody breathing down your neck to get it done.
That's it.
Basically. I forgot to mention, I think that maybe serve you well as well. I think I could vouch for you on that, where you're quite an honest guy, and I think if you can't do things, or if you couldn't do something, or if you do see an issue, you'll say, look, this is, you know, like, I'm going to tell you this, and it's maybe not right, or whatever. You'll be kind of honest with your own, your own advantage sometimes. But I think that'll serve you well, because if somebody's telling you porkies or trying to whittle money out of you, that's the last thing you want involved in a company.
No. Well, I've done jobs for people before, and I'm getting into somebody's house, and for talking's sake, an example, spotlights. I'm into somebody's house, and they're saying to me, "Oh, I want to put 10 spotlights in here," and obviously I've got lights that I use all the time, so I know how bright they are. You know, and I'm like, by the way, it's going to be like Blackpool in here. I says, I know I'm kind of doing myself a lot of work here. I says, you should only need any more than 6 lights, you know, or you're kind of advising them, you don't need that much, you know, go a bit less, or
I can see you.
You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you want the job to look good, and if you're going to, you know, you could stand there and no see it and fire 10 lights in, and it's like Blackpool, but it's, you know, somebody's just got an idea in their head, and they don't always realise they're different now. How bright things can be, you know.
Somebody comes, see if you did fit the 10 lights, another electrician comes along at the back of you and says what you did say in the first place, and then your reputation's.
Well, that's it. You've just got to go, you know what I mean? You've always got to be honest with somebody, and as I say, times you're honest with somebody, it's not always for your own benefit. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, you're just, you know, the good thing that I like about the job I've got now is, obviously, it's good when you get big jobs and stuff like that, but I like going to jobs for, like, going to the wee women's house, the wee old women's house and stuff like that, or old man or young man, whatever, and you're doing a job for them, and they're expecting the job to be a lot more expensive than it is, but because there's a lot of people out there that obviously that are out there and they're just ripping people off, and it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible how people can do these kind of things, you know. So it's good to be able to get there and you'll be able to kind of essentially look after somebody if it's a wee old woman or that, you know, because obviously every penny's a prisoner, isn't it? For everybody, not just the elderly. So
that sort of thinking will serve you well. See, going for the contractors, the agencies and the short-term projects, do you remember when the ball started rolling on your head and you're like, right, this is it? I know you said you started your LTD company 3 years previous, and you've only started running it over maybe the last year, I think, kind of a year.
That was August last year that I kind of went out, and obviously took the plunge, got the van and all that kind of stuff. But it'll be 4 years in August. This August, that'll be 4 years for a limited company. But prior to that, I was just working as a subcontractor, just running jobs for people. Right. But the wanting to work for myself has been something I've wanted to do for a long, long time. Right. Just for one reason or another, I've just never taken the kind of plunge type of thing. But with the way lockdown went last year, and then obviously getting back into it again, I thought, you know, I'm going to be good on the roads. It's a limited company. I'll start advertising and see how it goes. In my head, I thought to myself, you know, there's no need to panic if you've got a couple of weeks with no work, you know. So I kind of had that way of thinking about it. You know, don't worry if you're not working every hour, every day, and all that kind of stuff, you know. and I just started advertising for then, and it's just took off forever. I don't think I've ever really had a week where I've had no work. You know, it's if I've had a day that I've not been working, it's because I've taken a day off.
But do you think your hand was forced a wee bit with lockdown?
No, but I think I just got to a point where I'd had enough of it, because the job I was doing, I was testing houses up in Aberdeen for Aberdeen Council, so we get sent down the road again. But within a couple of days of us coming down the road, they wanted us to get back again. But the whole job itself had changed. Before we went into lockdown, it kind of, you know, as I said to you, you have a job, it's great, and then it changes, and that's what happened with that. The amount of money you were getting paid per day and all that had went less. They wanted to pay less but get more. So there was a few different factors in it, and I just thought, why not? You know, just get a bash and see how it goes. So
it had been in the back of your head for a long time, Scott. This and
I just thought to myself, my thinking is it, and it's been the thinking for it, I would say the way anybody should look at it, if they're going to start trying to do something like that, is I'll advertise, and if I've got a few jobs, but there's a week where I've not got anything, you could just jump on with an agency. You know, I could jump in with an agency and work with them for a week, keep advertising, and then let the jobs build up a wee bit and then go back to it again. That was my thinking with it. You know, if I have 2-3 weeks where I'm not working, I can jump onto an agency, a school, a new build or whatever, you know. But it just never came to that.
That's a good bit of thinking. The agency work has its downsides, but it also has its plus sides where it can allow you the freedom to build something, you know, getting a wee bit of money when things are not so well. That's
well, if you're for stuff like that, you know, talking about how you know yourself, how somebody can phone you up and tell you you've got this job, it's 2 years work, and you go there and it's 2 weeks work. Do you know what I mean? But that type of thing wouldn't matter then, because it's short term is what they're looking for. So that is the agency situation was ideal for them. Although, as I said, it never actually came to that. I never had to do that.
So what did you do, Scott? What was the initial steps?
I've always had as I say, when you're saying about how long I've been thinking about doing it for myself, I've had a Facebook page, a business page, for it's probably nearly 5 years now. And initially it was like, I was thinking before I would try it, and I never really did. The page was there for years, never really used it. And then I just thought, right, do a couple of jobs. I had pictures for jobs for homers and that I'd done, so I thought I'll stick them on, stick a post on, and then started kind of sharing it. And then kind of joined a few groups on Facebook. There's like local groups in Clydebank. There's CYAB, which is basically gets used for people to get recommendations for tradesmen and where to buy stuff and all this kind of thing. So I'm on a few groups like that, and just putting it, if I put a post on a page, I share it to these pages, and it just goes from strength to strength all the time. The more you're on these pages, the more you do jobs for people on them. If somebody's looking for an electrician, there's people that you've done work for, and they ends up getting them recommending you as well. So it gets to the point where you're putting a post on, or somebody's looking for an electrician. Sometimes I don't even need to see it. It's 2 or 3 people's tagged me in it, you know, saying to get me to do the job because I've done a job for them previously. So
right, okay.
Obviously it's all based on your reputation. So that's why no matter what size the job is, no matter how big or small, you know, because it essentially doesn't matter the size of the job. If you know, it's just obviously got to. I like to take pride in my work, so that seems to be going all right just now with that.
No, 100%. A few people that have been business owners have told me that the small jobs are your bread and butter, and your family your bread and butter. Make sure you do the wee jobs for your family, and make sure you do the wee small jobs for people, because as you were saying to us earlier on the phone, it kind of snowballs. You can do fit in a cooker, next minute the guy across the road wants 5 lights fitted, and that you were talking about that as well. You'd also mentioned earlier on the phone, Scott, I think it sounds to me that you had the option there that you could go for agency work, but at the same time you were using your Facebook page and using your advertising on social media a wee bit stronger. You'd mentioned to me that you were using social media clever earlier on, whereas you were posting at the right times and you're liking things at the right times and you're using the right
I'd got a wee bit of advice on that. So but that obviously it was the sharing it. If I put a post on and 30 or 40 people like that post, then you would I was told that the best thing to do would be to like each person, obviously, like, you'd say thanks to them. No, for any reason or other than I'm thankful that somebody's sharing it, but certain times a day, if you're doing that about dinner time and stuff like that, that's a better time to do it, because it then puts that post to the top of their timeline again, which increases the chances of more people seeing it, which obviously increases their chances of getting more work.
Brilliant bit of thinking. Social media, obviously, it's free advertising. It sounds like you've used it to your best advantage where for the beginning, and obviously you're using the wee techniques, and I think there's definitely something really good in that, where it's just expanding your audience, you know, like, and then you're also
the wee groups as well. They're good for the groups and that as well. Are good for like people I know. Obviously, I know a lot of people that have got their own businesses as well, so it's you're recommending them to other people as well, and and it is to help people out. You're doing it because it's somebody whose business, but you wouldn't recommend them if you didn't think they were good at their job. You know what I mean? So
right. There's business pages. Sorry, Scott, you're talking about business pages on different.
I mean, no, it's like Facebook groups. So like they call yourself a banking and stuff like that. CYEB or something it's called. So people put on that, and they maybe are looking for, I don't know, somebody, a joiner or something like that. So obviously there's times that you're on it and I'm just quite active on it, but you're recommending other people as well.
Recommend other contractors and they can recommend you, and people are looking
to
just tag each other and work and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a fair bit of work through there as well. So Scott Wilson, Electrical Services.
Mm-hmm.
How did you go about setting up, mate, and looking after all your taxes and stuff like that, making sure you were keeping yourself above board with everything?
Well, I was all right, but I was already set up with that because, as I said to you before, I had the limited company's been set up for a few years. So I've got an accountant who basically deals with everything for me every month, and they just deal with everything basically. They have been for the last 3 years. So when it came to me actually getting it, prior to that, I was basically getting a weekly wage for whoever I was working for, and now you're obviously, whether it's however you're getting paid, checks, bank transfer, some people paying you cash. I just took advice on them and how to deal with that, and explaining to them where I was going with it, and they just advised me on how to deal with that. But they just basically deal with everything for me, and it's the same now with the Apprentice as well. So it's all set up where they've got their own portal online. So he's got a code he can log in and sees pay slips from week to week and stuff like that. And so it's all all done the right way basically. So they can take care of all his tax because he's an employee of mine.
Can I ask you, what did they tell you specifically, Scott? What was the advice?
They're just basically just telling me that just the amount of money that you're bringing in and stuff like that. You're putting it all through. So it's just everything goes through the business account that you're dealing with your business. So you pay for your fuel through that. You pay for your materials through that. Everything related to your business goes through that account. And when they've got money coming in and money going out, they just need to know that the money going into the account is for jobs, and the money going out is for materials and stuff like that. And obviously it tells you, it documents everything that's going in and going out. So, but they're quite happy with how things are going anyway. So.
Right, I see. So you set up a business account, you move all your transactions through your business account, and then at the end you hand everything to your accountant, and he basically goes, this is how much you owe to the government, and that because of the transactions it's moved out of your bank account.
You're leaving in a certain amount per month to cover your taxes, stuff like that at the end of the year, and then he lets you know, and you get all that sorted. But that's never been a problem anyway. So.
What have you found the biggest pitfalls, mate, so far? Learning, have you found anything difficult? I know it's been going good for you, but what have you found the most difficult things about working for yourself?
More recently, I tried to get, when I started up, I had a wholesalers I was going to. So more recently, I try to kind of look into other places to see where I can get better deals and stuff like that. So that's try to sort that out. But not really been anything that's been a. Sometimes actually seeing one of the good things is obviously about how I can manage my time and how I can finish early and stuff like that. But sometimes that works against you in the opposite way as well, because like say I've got a diary and I've got maybe I normally try and have one big, if I can have one decent sized job and then maybe 2 or 3 wee jobs in the afternoon. But if that big job in the morning, if there's a problem on that and you're there for an extra 2 or 3 hours, it knocks everything out. But obviously, if you've made promises to people, you either try and rearrange them or get to them that day. So sometimes just try to manage the jobs can be difficult at times, but most of the time it's all right.
Manage clients' expectations of when you're going to.
Just the timing. It's like when I started, I used to tell people that I would be there. I'll come and see you at 4:30, and then it was I'll come and see you between 4 and 5. And then it was I'll come and see you between 3 and 5, and then it's 3 and 6 because if you tell somebody you're going to be there at 4:30, they're wondering where you are at 25 to 5. Do you know what I mean? Right. And it's damn near impossible for you to get to these jobs, but they set times if you've got 5 or 6 jobs a day. You don't want to give them a 24-hour time, like Sky in that day, I'll be there AM or PM.
Aye, you have to wait in the house all day for somebody to come.
Aye.
It's like you were saying
try
earlier.
Not be that bad, but
it's like you're saying earlier on, but being honest about stuff. You're trying to, if you promise somebody something, you don't turn up, it doesn't look great on you. You need to buy that time in so that the last wee while you've basically realised how much time certain jobs take and make sure that you're there in time with them and stuff like that. And that's good. You don't do a service like Sky, mate. Just
no, try my best, don't I?
Just wait in the house all day for somebody to arrive. Your electrician will be here between AM and PM.
I know, 8 to 8, and the guy turns up at 5 to 8 at night.
Nightmare stuff. Final note, mate. Last couple of questions for you. Best advice for somebody starting off in their own small company?
Just if it's the kind of trade I'm in, just what I said earlier on, really. Like, some people can just look at it and just think that it's absolutely massive. When I started advertising, I didn't have the van or anything like that. I didn't just go and say I'm going to work for myself. Go and buy a van and buy the test kits and all that. Obviously cost a few bob. Just advertised, and I was driving about in my car for a while. And after a wee while, you kind of see, as much as it's a nice car, it's obviously a lot better somebody turning up in a van with the writing on it and the logo on the t-shirt and stuff like that than it is just some guy pulling a wee ladder at the back of an Audi. Do you know what I mean? So, but you've just got to, you've obviously everybody's got to start somewhere. But I don't know. One thing I speak to a lot. Obviously, people speak to you and they ask you about it and stuff like that. And I don't know. I think you can I've done it for years myself. You can make it a lot bigger than it actually is. Because at the end of the day, it's just another job. It's just that you're in charge of it. So if you go to that job and you do that for 3 or 4 weeks and it doesn't work out, you get another job. Mm-hmm. It's the same as everything. It's the same concept. If you're working for a company, it might not work out with them after 3 or 4 weeks, but it's just the same concept as working yourself.
Do you think it's maybe starting your company? People think it's a bigger thing than what it is. They build it up in their head and it just becomes a big animal that they think.
Everybody thinks it's just, obviously, I mean, don't get me wrong, I was lucky, obviously I've been doing this for a long time, so I have got, you do need obviously you need tools to be able to do all the different jobs. If you need the big drill, if you're raggling walls, or, you need a test kit and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of that already because I've been working as a subby for years. So we've kind of built that up over the years, and obviously I've added a lot to it since then with the van and big ladders and all that kind of thing. But basically, all I done was, obviously with my site, a lot of the jobs I do soffit lights, mm-hmm. But I didn't do any soffit lights for about the first 2 months of me working for myself because I didn't have a van or a roof rack or a ladder. I just couldn't do them, so I was kind of turning them down for a while.
Do you know something, Scott? I think that this podcast, if anything, alone has been worth it for just that bit of information. I think for that bit of information alone, it's been worth it, mate, to be honest with you.
People being scared of failure into it, it's, you think because you're going to do it yourself, if it doesn't work out, you might have a couple of weeks you're not working. So obviously it's different, because I'm in a trade and because I've done agency work for so long, I know how quickly I can get back in my agency again.
Yeah.
But,
you've built up experience, Scott. You've built up experience in your trade, right? You've done the agency jobs, you've done the contract jobs, you've dealt with hundreds of different characters. So you've built up all the experience actually how to do your own trade, being an electrician through the years, come across. If you're doing it for, I guess you're doing it for about 20 years or something like that.
You're 23 years in August.
23 years in August, right? And you've still got a big beard like that. Is that back to black?
Shoe polish.
Is it genuine black or is it dyed and stuff though?
What's that?
Is it genuine black or is it dyed?
Is it genuine black? Listen, you've seen plenty of times. I've got plenty of grey hairs.
I
It
know,
just looks really good on that camera.
Did you brush it for the show?
No.
We did, yes. Yeah.
Not a beard, just the hair.
Brilliant. Glad of that. I've lost my way with a thing. I think that's a good bit of advice, mate. I've never thought about that before. I think that's a brilliant bit of advice, and I'm glad it's really worked for you. And I think that's something definitely worth sharing, that sort of thought pattern. Would you have done the whole thing earlier, looking back now? Or do you think the timing was all right?
I wish I did, but I think it's just the timing and stuff like that, you know, less financial commitments and stuff like that, you know, it's obviously still got a house and all that kind of stuff, but it's probably, I wish I'd done it years ago, but probably the perfect time for me, really.
Aye, so just good timing, but look, in hindsight, you could have maybe started a wee bit earlier.
I definitely could have started it a while ago, I think so, but obviously the advertising that, you know, they're dead busy, you know, get people phoning you, you get 2 or 3 inquiries a day type of thing, you know, and talking about the advertising thing, if I've got millions of jobs, then I won't advertise as much because I don't want to knock back any jobs.
Right, okay.
But obviously, at the same time, it's only me that's doing them. Obviously, I've got the Apprentice, but he's with me as well, you know, so if I'm really busy, then I just don't really put any posts on because it kind of slows it down a wee bit. But then when you get a bit quieter, you just put a couple on within a few days, and it kind of gets you kind of doing that way. So just try to manage it that way as well. I don't have a set amount of posts I put on a week or anything like that. You know, it's just
right. To make sure that you're not letting people down and you're balancing your.
you don't want to knock back jobs, don't want to knock back work. So obviously, if you've got millions of work, you know. Recently, I've had to turn down a couple of rewires and stuff like that because the length of time they're going to take, and it's just, you know, try to commit to that. It's hard, you know. So it's maybe something that you obviously in the future when I'll have somebody else working for me as well. That'll be something that's a bit more manageable because there's a couple of ways, you know. Because obviously, as much as you're wanting jobs like that, rewires and stuff, you've obviously got to do you want to do the smaller jobs as well, you know what I mean? So just try to cover everything really.
I guess maybe that's the game plan of your apprentice. 4 or 5 years from now, he should hopefully be able to take the van keys and head after that job himself.
Aye, well he's not even got his driving licence yet, and he's wanting the van keys now, do you know what I mean? So
that kind of feeds into my next question, so it does. What advice would you give your 14-year-old self, mate, in relation to work? If you go back, can it tell your 14-year-old self anything about work? What would you say to them?
I don't know really. I think I kind of quite happy with the way things went for me with work. You know, I wouldn't have done anything quicker with like city building and stuff. I was with them for 10 years. I wasn't ready to leave before then. You know, I think I needed the birth of my son for that to actually make that change. Obviously, you go through life, things happen, it makes you change your view and stuff. But maybe just I don't know. It wasn't work related, but
so you would just you'd be quite happy with how it all set out, mate. That's good. I like that because
aye.
Yourself, look, mate, it all worked out not too bad. To just make sure you go to the place and become an electrician and you fucking enjoy yourself. That's cool. That means it worked out all right, Scotty. Everything's going grand.
Aye, it's been good, mate.
I would see if I could tell my 14-year-old self I would be there for a while. By the way, I'd probably write him a book.
That's a whole different podcast, though, isn't it?
That's a podcast we're not going to do. That's a podcast.
There's a lot more greeting and no laughing in that one. Do you know what I mean?
That'd be a sob story with a horror story. But honestly, it's worked out all right as well. So it's took its time. You sound as if you were a lot more settled in your early years. Now you quite enjoyed becoming an electrician all through your years. 10 years was quite settled with your company books in, and then you done well out of the agency work as well. I maybe had a few more years which were a wee bit unsettled than what you did, and I would have maybe done things slightly different. But so any other additional things, mate, you would like to mention on your company or where you see it going?
in Afghanistan, Adam. That was the bit we missed.
Did I miss a whole story about Afghanistan, did I?
Aye, well, I told you before, didn't I, that I was there. That was another one. Again, the kind of... I was in a wholesaler's in Edinburgh, and I met somebody that I know, and there was an advertisement in the wall for electricians in Afghanistan. And this was 2012.
God,
so
I forgot.
I ended up over there for a year, working over there for a year, which obviously was a good experience. I met a lot of people, worked with an American company. So that was obviously interesting, being to Glasgow and trying to understand a word I could say. Do you know what I mean? So I think at the point when I went there, I wanted to do something like that. Wasn't necessarily Afghanistan. I fancied working away, like properly working away, you know, doing something different. So that job came up, and I went to that, and I was there for a year. I was 20 weeks in Afghanistan, with 2 weeks at home, and then 20 weeks away again. So it was a long time. It was hard going because obviously missed the kids at that time. I only had the 2, so I missed them when I was over there. But it was a good experience. You know, got to meet a lot of people, and still in contact with them now. Finding out how different it is in America, or Americans are. You know, like how different people can be for different parts of the world. You know,
see a wee bit of the world, mate, meeting different.
I meet a lot of people. You know, I met a lot of people from America. There was the soldiers and stuff like that. It was guys from El Salvador, and obviously just different people, Italians, Spanish. You know, working in these places. So obviously it was a war zone, but it wasn't that bad, if that makes any sense. Where I was, I never really left the army base. You know, you kind of flew in a military plane, and you were just rewiring stuff. Basically, you were responsible for anywhere the American military lived or worked, and you were to check to make sure it was all above board. But none of the cable was listed. It was just, you know, Afghan wire. It was all mad. So you just had to basically just ripped everything out and rewired it all.
Right, okay.
110 degrees, turning the power off. It's not very good, do you know what I mean?
Would you recommend it to folk, that sort of stuff, mate? Would you recommend it to somebody else?
Aye, as an experience, it was a good experience, and don't get me wrong, obviously made good money doing it as well. So, but it was a good experience.
And for a short stint, maybe.
Aye. I wouldn't do it now. I mean, I forgot. Obviously, I wouldn't do it now because I work for myself. But even if I wasn't working for myself and I wasn't happy with my job, I still wouldn't take it as an option now. You know, I kind of done that. You know, I wouldn't want to be away from my kids for as long as that. Anyway, there was, when rockets went off, there was bits that we went running the scene, and it hadn't happened necessarily when I was there. It maybe been the week before or something like that. And obviously when the rockets were going off, the rocket alarm used to go off on the base, right? So they've got the wire and all that around the base, and they had alarms, had sensors over the top of them. So anything came out the top of the fence, the alarm went off. It was obviously called the rocket alarm because 9 times out of 10, if anything came out, it was a rocket, you know. But aye, it was obviously there was a lot of where at.
That PRI, Scott, or RPI, PRI?
Aye, RPG or something. I'm not sure.
One of them upside down, pointing up to the sky.
Aye.
Missiles over the top.
Obviously, where I was, you know, it was quite quiet and stuff like that. But at the same time, there was people, there was soldiers that was on like their second and third tour, and talking to some of them, and they're saying it was like a holiday camp compared to what it was like when they were there before. Right. And there was somebody that I spoke to, and they'd lost their full team, you know, the soldiers. There was only about 2 or 3 of them that actually left. You know, there was like 30 soldiers, and I think there was like 2 or 3 of them went home for there. That was only a few years before it. So there was obviously always the potential of that. But I was kind of in the north of the country. It was a bit quieter. It was in Herat. But when I was in Kandahar, which is where my company was based, I hated it when I was there because the rocket alarm went off about 5 or 6 times a day. So what you were actually supposed to do was, any time that went off, you were supposed to you had a bulletproof vest as part of your like your PPE basically. You were supposed to stick that on and go and sit in the bunker. But because the alarm went off that many times, it just got to a point where there's that alarm going off again, you know. But obviously, that's how complacency into it. So that's how these horrible situations can happen. That fortunately never happened to me. Although just before we left, it was actually when I was back in Kandahar, so it was about 3 or 4 days before we were due to fly out. You would leave the base you were on about 3 or 4 days before you were due to fly home, because sometimes the flights would get cancelled, so you would never you would never leave it to the last minute. We were there for a few days, and there was like a rocket landed just beside where our compound was, but it actually never went off. It never set off, and there was, and basically these things were tearing through buildings. You know what I mean? They had steel doors. They had big thick steel doors that were supposed to be like rocket proof, basically. They were absolutely torn to shreds. I'd seen an MRAP, a mine repellent vehicle. So obviously the key's in the name there. It's meant to be a mine repellent, but these things were just getting absolutely destroyed. So, but it was a good experience for work. It was a good laugh. You know what I mean? There was on it.
Missile repellent sensors, but fucking.
Aye, but it was a good experience. Work-wise, it was a good experience, and obviously got to meet a lot of people. But it was just another part of the kind of gone through all the jobs I'd went through. More experience for yourself.
Aye, no, it was a good part. It's a good story that Annie put in there. Scott Wilson of Scott Wilson Electrical Services. Thanks very much for coming on, mate. I'll wrap it up.
No worries. It's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.